Hey guys, I'm down on my couch just hanging out. I'm not at my desk, so I'm probably gonna be off the screen for most of this video. Plus, it's gonna be a short one. But I wanted to bring you an update. Give me 1 second. It is Saturday afternoon. I'm not used to getting updates at this day or time of the week, but the judge put in an order this afternoon in the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni case. We have an order on these sealing requests. So the parties, when they filed their the motion for summary judgment, the motion for judgment on the pleadings, and that was the Wayfarer parties. And then when Blake Lively filed her motion for spoliation sanctions, they had all these attachments to it that they wanted to keep sealed, or Blake Lively, for the most part, wanted to keep things sealed. And the judge gave all the parties and third parties in this matter a deadline to request continued sealing of that information. So they were allowed to make their arguments as to why they thought that certain information should be permanently sealed or hidden from the public, basically. And sometimes that's justified when it comes to certain personal information like phone numbers, email addresses, shit like that, home addresses, for example, which is why it was such a big deal when Blake Lively leaked the full deposition transcripts of Jamie Heath and Justin Baldoni last week. She outed their home addresses because she didn't redact like she was supposed to per the court's orders. There's some like financial information or like business information that's sensitive for third parties that will probably be kept hidden. And some of that stuff makes sense, right? But a lot of the requests to seal were like text messages between third parties about like relevant events or text messages with third parties. Blake Lively basically wanted to keep text messages between her and some of her more famous friends sealed. But the deadline passed. They all made their arguments for what they wanted to keep sealed, and then they all had a chance to oppose that and say, no, this is why this information should be made public. And the judge's order is asking that most of that stuff be made public. So I'm going to walk through this with you real quick. This is going to be a short one because we don't actually have the documents yet, but here's what we're going to be looking at. He says, before this court are various requests for sealing and unsealing filed by both parties and non-parties regarding materials submitted in connection with Blake Lively's motion for spoliation sanctions against Wayfarer, Jonesworks' motion for spoliation against Jennifer Abel, Abel's motion for summary judgment against Jonesworks, and the Wayfarer party's motion for summary judgment against Lively. So the only things that he's going to address in this order are the spoliation sanctions motion stuff and the motion for summary judgment documents. So this stuff with Jonesworks and Jen Abel, he has decided not yet to rule on those sealing requests, I think, because, or at least that's what it looks like from what I've skimmed over this, because that is not going to come up in the hearing on Thursday. There's going to be an in-person hearing on Thursday, and they'll be arguing about the motion for summary judgment. Each side will get like an hour to make their case. And so he's basically just looking at the exhibits attached to that. He's trying to make sure that the court has this information available to the public so that when they follow along with the arguments and they're looking at the judge's decision, they have all the information they need to understand what went into it. It says oral argument on the Wayfarer party's motion for summary judgment and Lively's motion for spoliation sanctions is scheduled for next Thursday, January 22nd. The public has a right to attend that argument and to follow along based on the unredacted summary judgment and spoliation materials. That is, to the extent continued sealing of the materials cannot be justified. Accordingly, the court provides the following bottom line conclusions on the motions for sealing and unsealing so that the parties have sufficient time to appropriately re-redact and refile materials before oral argument. The parties who submitted the materials shall refile them by January 21st at 1 p.m. So Wednesday at 1 p.m. is the deadline. They have to refile all this stuff with only the redactions the judge has approved to remain. The judge is going to give us a table of like what is and is not going to remain sealed or what redactions are approved, basically, but he says here the court will in short order provide a written opinion with its specific on the record findings explaining why continued sealing of certain materials is justified. So he's not going to give an in-depth explanation in this order right here as to why he's allowing certain things to remain sealed, but he will. It's just that they wanted to get this out right now so the parties have time to submit these materials before the deadline on Wednesday. The judge says that the motions from Isabella Ferrer, Betty B. Holdings, Family Hive, Sony Pictures Entertainment, and WME are all denied, except to the extent they seek sealing of PII. A PII, personally identifying information, like I said, is addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, that kind of thing. And then also, except to the extent that Sony seeks sealing of Exhibit 23, filed in support of defendant's motion for summary judgment. here's Exhibit 23. Let me show you guys. So it was a financing agreement between Wayfarer and I think it was Columbia, who has something to do with Sony Pictures Entertainment. They wrote about it in their motion. Hold on. So Sony, when they were seeking to seal that, wrote here, Exhibit 23 is a co-financing, co-production, and distribution agreement between Sony affiliate Columbia Pictures and certain of the Wayfarer parties. The exhibit contains extremely sensitive financial and distribution terms that Sony treats as strictly confidential to preserve its competitive position in the film and television industry. So I guess the judge agreed that that's like business information that is not necessarily pertinent to the case from a being available to the public standpoint. If you guys disagree with that, you have to let me know. It's not like the messages and shit like that. So the judge is saying that, hold on, let me go back here. Everything that they asked to have sealed, that's denied. So they have to unseal all of these messages and everything between like the Sony people and the WME people. Those things have to be unsealed. The only thing that he's approving to remain sealed are like addresses and stuff like that, and that one financing agreement. He goes on to write, the motions of the Wallace non-parties, Katie Case and Brianna Butler-Coslow, and the Wayfarer parties and Lively are denied in part and granted in part as detailed below. The parties are also directed to refile their respective memoranda of law and Rule 56.1 statements consistent with the rulings in this order. To the extent the parties' memoranda of law and Rule 56.1 statements refer to portions of the documents that the court now seals, those references should be redacted as well. So they have to refile these things with, everything unredacted except for the portions that the court has agreed to seal. And then here he mentions where this stuff does not resolve the requests for sealing regarding the Abel motion and the Jones work motion because those things are not going to be brought up in the hearing on Thursday. So he gives us a few tables here where he shows like what the ruling is on each exhibit. So let me give you guys an example of how this kind of works. We have table C, the parties' proposed redactions and the court's rulings. Lively, the sealing proponent on these two, is asking to seal MSJ exhibits 18 and 19 for third-party privacy interests. Let's go to her letter where she mentioned these and why she wants them sealed, just to give a little bit more background. It says, Ms. Lively's narrowly tailored request seeks to seal, 1, limited confidential communication strictly between third parties. And then she goes on to describe some other stuff, but you can see here she's referencing these two exhibits, PL-MSJ exhibits 18 and 19. Now, if you go to the footnote, it says, PL-MSJ exhibit refers to exhibits attached to the Gottlieb declarations. So when I go here to the Gottlieb declaration, I can see that exhibits 18 and 19 are text messages from June 19th and June 22nd, 2023. So these are text messages, I guess, between third parties about, what was going on. I don't know who it's between or anything like that, but the judge is saying here that these have to be unsealed. So he's just like, unseal it all. No reductions there. So you'll also see on some of these, it's like seal pursuant to proposed redactions, where it's not like he's going to seal the whole exhibit. So the public will be able to see the exhibit, but there will be some redactions. And I can't go through right now and look at everything and see what the proposed redactions were. Not only because I just don't have the time to do that for all these pages, but also because I don't know what her proposed redactions are. I don't know how I would even, I don't think we can even see that. So some of them have proposed redactions that will like remain, but then it could be like names. I'm not sure exactly what it is for each one. Then some of them are just unsealed outright. And it's kind of the same with the Wayfarer stuff. It's like some of it's unsealed except for proposed redactions. Some of it's sealed pursuant to proposed redactions. It's going to be hard to know what exactly this stuff is without taking a whole lot of time to look through it. All right. So without, having a very long time to spend going through that, trying to figure out what everything is, that's all I can really tell you right now. Like I said, the judge is supposed to later give a further explanation of why things that are to remain sealed will remain sealed. And the parties have until Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern to file this stuff without the redactions unless approved by the court. So, all right, thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.